Lil Dumpy is a familiar that follows you around the room. It does not shoot, but it will trigger a fart if Isaac is about to take damage, pushing enemies and shots away in the process. As soon as Lil Dumpy did fart, it gets pushed away and falls asleep. Isaac can reuse to protect the fart multiple times in a single room by picking the familiar back up. But the fart is not only used for defense. Pushing enemies into a wall, obstacle or other foes will deal damage, and reflected projectiles will also harm them when hit. You can't instantly recover Lil Dumpy. It will be asleep for 2 seconds from the moment the fart started, even if you stand right on it the whole time. Give it a break. The familiar will sometimes be pushed very far, especially in bigger rooms. This can cause it to fall asleep behind obstacles, making it very hard to get it back at times. Your first idea would probably be to free it with a bomb, but keep in mind that it will also come back to you if you leave the room, so don't waste your bombs just for this. The protective fart of Lil Dumpy does not save you from every mistake. For example, some enemies can be pushed, so running into them will still hurt you either way. It also doesn't protect you from any source of damage that is stationary, or any form of attack that can be pushed away or deflected, like spikes or explosions. Lil Dumpy is also not able to reflect brimstone-like beam attacks, which are quite common later on in a run. The fart of Lil Dumpy is usually able to push away bosses, but there are lots of exceptions to that, and some will only be pushed for a very short distance. You should never count on it working in boss fights, especially considering that a lot of them use creep and explosions. Better use it only for defense there. However, it goes without saying that the defensive part of the item alone is insanely powerful. You can basically treat it as a reusable holy mantle in most combat situations. But let's talk about offense now. The bounce of the fart deals 10 damage to pushed foes that hit a wall or obstacle, and those will also deal 10 damage to other enemies that they get pushed into. This damage is not affected by your damage stat, but it will increase by 2 for each floor after the first, making it stronger the deeper you are on your run. It will reach its highest possible bounce damage of 34 on the home floor, which is considered as floor number 13 by the game. The damage of the reflected projectiles is a fixed number that is not affected by your stats or the floor number. It just depends on the type of shot and the enemy it is coming from, but it is usually 6 in most cases. There are 2 more niche damage cases I need to show you. Lil Dumpy will also deal damage if an enemy gets pushed through it, when the pushed enemy stands between you and the familiar. The damage of this niche situation is a very odd number of 8.33 that is the same on all floors and not affected by your stats either. And an even more weird fact I discovered, Lil Dumpy is actually able to deal contact damage as well, but only when reaching a very high velocity that is not really practical to use. Getting the BFF's item will increase the size of Lil Dumpy, but it doesn't really do much for it. The sleep time is still 2 seconds and the bounce and reflect damage stays the same as well. But BFFs will still do at least something. It will quadruple the 8.33 damage of the point blank fart damage to 33.33, and it also increases the weird contact damage by the same. Getting multiple Lil Dumpy familiars will cause all of them to stack into each other at the same spot next to Isaac. The different familiars will also trigger consecutively instead of all at the same time, which makes it actually really worth it to copy the item with diplopia-like effects. Just be aware that you still have to recollect all of them at some point, and running into an unpushable enemy or damage source will trigger all of them at the same time, frame by frame. The fart will trigger before the panic button trinket can activate, and Lil Dumpy will also ignore any damage source, while Isaac is invulnerable or shielded. But Lil Dumpy will also trigger before other positive on-hit effects such as the bounce effect of Belly Jelly have a chance to activate, but they still make a good defensive combo either way. And while we are talking about defensive, Lil Dumpy is actually obtainable when playing as Tainted Lost. It is a very good substitute for the missing Holy Mantle item. Not only will it protect him from certain death at times, it will also protect the shield of your Holy card, as the Lil Dumpy fart will trigger before the shield would be activated and wasted. Lil Dumpy is sadly not affected by the duct tape and friendship necklace trinkets, which both would make it way easier to recollect it after falling asleep. Lil Dumpy will also not activate when Isaac's heart is damaged. The familiar will still try to protect the body instead of the heart, making it nearly useless in this situation. But a synergy that you certainly do want to have is Lil Dumpy plus Gigantibean. The trinket will greatly enhance the range of Lil Dumpy's farts, making them hit nearly the entire room. But this is not all. The trinket will also cause the fart to deal 10 initial damage to each hit enemy, even before hitting any obstacles, walls or enemies, making it way better offensively than before.
He's the number one, God's favorite son. His flowing robe reaches down from heaven. His hands will touch you, build the world.